Let's get into this. Let's talk about some of this non-traditional fishing methods, Larry Pugh.
Okay.
As there's one more, there are a lot of other ways to catch a fish, and hand grabbing, noodling, grabbling, whatever you want to call it, it is going on right now.
Going on right now, JT. And let me say, this time of year, as we go into July and August, the dog days of summer, it can be a tough time to fish traditionally with rod and reels. You might have small windows in the morning or small windows in the evening. So we decided it would be good to talk about a lot of these non-traditional methods this time that folks like to use this time of the year. And certainly hand grabbing ranks right up there at the top. We have a season May 1st to July 15th, and that coincides with when catfish spawn. And these catfish are attracted to these cavities, wooden boxes, and folks get in there and get after it. Have you ever done it, Major Reed?
I never have.
JT, have you ever hand grabbed?
I have not.
I'd like to say that growing up, baseball took precedence over hand grabbing, but some of my friends did it, so that's not a valid excuse.
I know people that do it,
yeah.
And I tell you one thing about it: when they go, they always bring back fish.
Oh yeah. It's extremely popular, and probably the most questions, or the most popular question we get in the main office is, what can we put in the water, for these fish to try to get in there and spawn. And basically it's got to be a wooden container of any type. It can't be a metal plastic barrel. Hot water heaters were extremely popular 20 years ago, I know, from a little bit of experience. And we just ask that, it's got to be a wooden container if you put it in the public waters. And the other thing is, really two other things. You can't use a hook. You can use a rope to assist, but no hooks of any type. And if you're partaking in hand grabbing, you've got to have a valid fishing license. Most people don't realize
most people,
that.
You don't think about, I don't have a rod and reel.
Yeah.
I'm good. I just go out here and start grabbing these things. I never could hold my breath real long underwater.
Well, that's how you do it, isn't it, Larry?
Yeah.
You go under. Now tell people how they actually do it.
Well, obviously these boxes are set out.
Well, wait a minute. He didn't answer the question. Have you done it?
No.
Oh,
I've been in boats that they were participating. But JT, I don't know. I've just got
this.
this.
He's so good at catching them with the rod and reel.
No, that's not it.
Grab them with my hands.
It's something about putting my hand somewhere that I can't see where it's going,
and want something to bite your hand.
Exactly. So these folks that hand grab go in the water. They know where these boxes are, and they go underwater, and they'll either take their foot or their hand to check, make sure usually their foot to make sure that there's a fish in there. And if there's a fish in there, they go down in there, and you want the fish to bite you, which goes against everything that I was brought up to, So once that fish latches on, you have grabbed it and you're pulling it out.
Where'd they come up with noodling?
Missouri calls it noodling. Some of the other states call it noodling. I'd never heard it called that. But
now there's only certain areas that you can hand grab. Is that correct, Larry Pugh?
No, you can hand grab statewide, JT.
No, but I meant like at the Ross Barnett Reservoir. Is it restricted to certain areas there too?
I don't think so. I know we've got some gears that are restricted on the reservoir. Like trot lines, jugs, yo-yos, set hooks, limb lines, but I think hand grabbing's wide open on Barnett. I think there's some let me correct myself. I think there's some language that might be within a certain distance of a marina or a house or a neighborhood or something like that.
All right, let's talk about jug fishing. Now, we've all done that, and it's a great way, especially if you got a bunch of catfish in a lake that you're trying to get rid of. You can turn it into a game. Get the kids out there and say every jug you bring in with something, give them something for it. If you're trying to get rid of a lake of catfish, it's a wonderful way to help control it anyway.
Yeah, it's really popular this time of year. JT, I was on the water Saturday, and I actually saw several different groups that were out fishing free-floating fishing devices. And
that's a mouthful.
Yeah, that's a mouthful. They were jug fishing, and they were doing really good. And it's pretty simple. You just need anything that'll float, a line, a weight, and a hook, and some bait, and get after it. Of course, a lot of folks have gotten fancier over the years than what we used growing up with swimming noodles in PVC that are really popular these days. But it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun when it's hot. And not a hard way to fish. Just throw them out and let them fish.
Is it because, like, are the feeding habits any different for the catfish when it's hot like that? Or do they move to certain areas where you can, why don't you jug fish? I guess the question would be that I'm thinking in my brain. Why don't you jug fish like in the spring?
You could.
But it's not really utilized then.
No.
Correct?
No. I think it's because of what we're talking about today. It's hot.
Right.
The fish are more active. The fish can be found throughout the water column versus the winter, where they tend to be deeper. So this time of the year, you might catch them at night 3 feet under the surface on a jug, or during the day, you might catch them 10 feet. In the winter, they might be in 30 feet, which is hard to fish jugs. So metabolism is a lot higher. The fish are moving around, and I don't know. They're found throughout the water column, so it's an easy way to target them.
And there's a lot of different regulations when it comes to this, correct?
Yeah, JT, we get a lot of calls. I mean, obviously, you can fish 25 jugs per person with no more than 2 single hooks on each jug. And, we get these questions a lot. Well, do I have to tag them? Mm-hmm. Well, there's only a certain water bodies that we require that you tag your jugs or your free-floating fishing devices. I'm going to get that wrong here in a minute.
Yeah.
But Eagle Lake, Lake Washington, and then the 4 flood control reservoirs, Sardacina, Grenada, and Arca-Butler, are the only waters in the entire state where you have to, by law, tag your jugs. And when we mean tag, all we need is your MDWFP number on that jug. For if our officers are involved in anything in terms of checking anything, you need to have your MDWFP number on there. And if you're exempt, which 65 and older or on disability or less than 16, all we need is your name, address, and zip code. So if you're, jug fishing on Barnett or Pickwick or Okeechobee, you don't have to tag your jugs.
And when you say tag, you don't necessarily, it doesn't exclusively have to be like a dog tag.
No.
Say.
Write them on it
with a Sharpie.
Mm-hmm. As long as our officers can read, legibly read what you've got on there, what your number is. Now, if I were to go fish jugs at Barnett, or if I were at Pickwick jug fishing, I'd probably put my name on them. Just so if there was some discrepancy about whose is who, I'd want to be able to say my name's on those. But by law, those are the only waters that you have to have them tagged.
Got a call, Clayton in Madison. Clayton, you're on Mississippi Outdoors Radio. What can we help you with?
Hey, I got a young son that loves the inner tube on a ski boat, and I was told by a young man in a pontoon boat that we're not supposed to be pulling inner tubes behind boats between Highway 43 and Lowhead Down. We're just going to reach out and see if that was true or not.
Dun, dun, dun. It may be true.
Between Highway 43 and Lowhead?
Yeah.
Upriver?
I don't know.
Right. Basically, in the river, he said that he was given a ticket for pulling an inner tube behind a pontoon boat.
Well, there may be some more questions to...
Was that specifically because it was an inner tube? Is that what he said?
That's what he told me. This was a brief conversation between boats.
Right.
And I just went ahead and pulled it in and latched it down in the boat. I didn't want to get a ticket. So
now there's a section way upriver around the dam up there that is a no wake zone, and there's also requirements that one must satisfy to pull someone on a tube or a ski, and so there has to be an observer there and has to be a X number of people in the boat. So if it was just 2 people, the driver of the boat and the person on the tube, they may have been issued a citation for that, or it may have been in a no wake zone upriver. But
he made it sound like it was skiing and wakeboarding only is what he was told. And I have no idea. So.
I'm sort of like Major Reed. I'm not sure that maybe there wasn't something else going on that maybe he didn't communicate to you, or unless he was, in, like you said, in that area, as far as that's concerned, of where it is. Man, it's been so long since I've been upriver. I can't tell you. It's probably been 3 years since I've gone upriver. Listen, we'll do everything we can do to get the answer for you before it's all said and done today. Okay.
All right, y'all take care. Thank you.
All right, man. Thank you. Let's see. Ask them if it is legal to gig frogs. I'm having trouble getting a clear answer on the internet.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you
can.
You don't have to have a license to do that?
You have to have a license, but I think what he is asking is, can you break the skin? Can you actually use a frog? We get that a lot. People frog hunting, and they want to know if they can break the skin and use a gig, and you can.
Okay.
Yeah. I hope so. We have a season, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we grew up doing it. We had a frog gig.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to talking about the non-traditional fishing methods.
Yo-yos.
More than one way to catch a fish. Yo-yos. How about that?
You ever fished a yo-yo, JT?
I have not.
Really? Well, I hope
I've done jug fishing. I've done trot lining.
Well, growing up in the Delta, yo-yos were an extremely popular way to catch crappie and catfish on the Mississippi River oxbows. And we would always go out in the evening, set our yo-yos, and basically it's just a spring-loaded device. Looks really similar to a yo-yo, usually 3 inches in diameter. It's got line on it. Usually comes with the hook and the weight, and you secure your yo-yo in typically a cypress tree or a tree of some type, and you set that yo-yo. You let out the line that you want, depending on how deep you want to fish, and then it trips once the fish hits and sets the hook, and it pulls the fish up. And you get up the next morning, or it's what we would do. You get up the next morning, go run our yo-yos. And it's almost like an automatic fishing reel once the fish is hooked. So if it's a big fish, you'll see your line straight, and it'll just be swimming around. You'll know you've got a good fish. If it's a smaller fish, sometimes they'll pull the fish right up to the surface of the water. But typical, just like the jug fishing, anglers are allowed to fish 25 yo-yos per person with no more than 2 single hooks. And tagging requirements are just like I just said. On those 6 water bodies, Eagle, Washington, and the 4 flood control reservoirs, you have to tag your yo-yos. Not that you shouldn't anywhere else you're fishing, but by law, those are the 6 waters that you have to tag them on.
And we want people to understand when you do this, also you got to be out there for when you're out on the water. Don't forget, you're running these trot lines, you're doing all this kind of stuff. You got to have all your safety equipment that you'd have to have at any other time. So we want people to always remember that.
Sure.
All right, Larry Pugh, let's get back to our non-traditional fishing. By the way, before we do that, Chris, let's clarify what that last caller had asked us about tubing north of Highway 43 on the river.
Yeah, so we made contact with some of the officers up there in that world, and it is in fact illegal to pull a tube north of Highway 43 to the Lowhead Dam there upriver on the reservoir, and I guess some of the reasoning behind that is first off a safety deal, because you can legally pull a skier or a wakeboarder, but you can only do that. One person, you can only have one skier behind your vessel, and that's so you can traverse through those curves and through the brush and the sticks and the
channel markers. A lot of
channel markers up that way, and that's a reservoir patrol regulation, not a state regulation. So that is in fact true, and do not pull tubes this weekend upriver
north of 43 anyway.
Yeah,
right.
And it's a real curvy part of the river too, and it's just they see it as a danger thing. So.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, you can come around a curve and there be somebody that it's just not.
Well, I didn't think about it, JT, and I only fished there. I've never skied or any of that up the river, but there's all kind of wooden channel markers, green, red channel markers, and you get going fast and sling a tube left or right.
Yeah, and you're just at the mercy of
how hard are you going to hit it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the kids want you to sling them.
Oh, yeah.
That's what they want to do. All right, limb lines, throw lines, and set hooks, another way to fish. What's this all about?
Well, I mean, I just started thinking about what we did growing up as kids. We didn't have the internet, so we had to actually get out and do things.
Where'd you grow up?
Huh? Vicksburg.
Well, I mean, I knew the answer, but the
Delta.
The listening audience may not, because I was thinking you just lived out in the middle of you was country.
Oh man, yeah, limb lines.
Talking about all the stuff you did.
Yeah. So limb lines, we were always setting limb lines for catfish, and basically we take a line, tie it directly to an overhanging limb or a tree, Sometimes we used a weight, sometimes we did, and we used anything for bait. Most of the time it was worms or green sunfish, brim, anything we could catch. And it's pretty simple. And as kids, that's what we were all about. Sometimes we'd take a cane pole and tie a hook to it and stick it in the bank of the Big Black River, and that was our either a set hook or a limb line. And then I got to looking at some of the language in our regulations, and I said, "What's a throw line?"
Is it? I mean, it's like the stuff you see on the alligator show.
Well, we called it a trot line growing up, which it's
Same
not.
thing?
It's pretty much a throw line is something instead of tied, limb to limb like a trot line with a weight in the middle. All a throw line is it's got a weight on the end. It's tied to the bank. One side's tied to the bank. Throw it out there with a weight, and that's a throw line. But it's got a weight attached at one end. But again, just a different method that I know a lot of the listeners, do it now and have done it in the past. But it's something we don't think about, something we did growing up as kids, and it can be a great time, especially this time of the year. Well, not right now with the rivers high, but when the rivers start falling to get out and target catfish.
And, of course, the trot lines. We've all done that one.
Yeah. Very effective way to catch catfish. Pretty simple, just like it says, a heavy fishing line with bait hooks attached. The key is they've got to be 2 feet apart, according to our regs, and you can only have 100 hooks on a trot line with your sport fishing license. They don't have to be tagged, and that's something that's changed, and we get a lot of questions on that. That's why I wanted to bring it up. 20 years ago, you had to tag your trot line. It had to be, 3 feet of cotton twine attached to it. And anyway, we did away with all that, and we don't tag our trot lines. Again, if it were me, I might, if he wasn't able to hide it, I might tag it anyway. But you don't have to provide that tag on a trot line. Bait it with just like what we were talking about with limb lines and throw lines, typically cut bait, worms. My dad loved catalpa worms. Once we started getting catalpa worms off the trees, that's what we baited our trot lines with, and caught a lot of fish. A very effective way to fish.
No doubt about that. And then, of course, trot lines, you got to, we go to bow fishing.
Bow fishing.
How about that? That's interesting.
Well, that's gotten really popular, JT. I would say probably the last 20 years, and I've seen tournaments develop because of the opportunities. Basically it's pretty simple, and I've had the opportunity to participate in it. You take a rod or reel, and attach it to a bow, and you shoot fish with it. And once you shoot the fish, you reel it in with your reel. And the arrows have a special tip that once you hit that fish, that you're able to reel it in. The guys that I had the opportunity to go with that were set up to do this, they had and if you ever go to Bass Pro, you'll see some boats that are set up for it. They typically have a rail around the front deck. They had a generator that ran the floodlights on the front of the boat so you could see the fish. And, we would just be going down the bank, and you could pick out, gar, catfish, carp, shad, bowfin. And with the increasing numbers of Asian carp in the Delta floodwaters, a couple of years ago, we said, heck, we didn't realize it was illegal that you couldn't shoot Asian carp with your bow. And so we made that change because Lord knows we want anybody out there bow fishing to have an opportunity to shoot them, along with the other gar, shad, the typical things that you think about. And it got so popular that we even have established records, state records for non-traditional methods.
I hate to do this, but do you need a hunting license or a fishing license to do this? Yeah, ba-doom-doom.
I think any valid license would probably work. But you would have to have one. Yes.
You got to have some kind of license.
And look, for $10 for a year, what a great deal,
It sounds like it's a lot of fun. It is. You ever done it?
I have. Yeah. I have. I actually got to fish with a guy in Noxubee County that was a tournament bow fisher, and he had the fancy boat, and he was very serious about it. He went all over the Southeast and upper Midwest fishing these bow fishing tournaments, and it's long nights.
Yeah.
So we would put in at dusk and might not get back off the water till 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
And, that's just
not your typical hours of operation.
Not something I really enjoy. But I did go a couple of times. It's pretty amazing what you can see at night going down the banks. With the, obviously water clarity is important. And, if you're able to see the fish, certainly it's a challenge to shoot them. I thought it would be easy, but being able to, because the fish doesn't just sit there and freeze like a deer, in headlights.
So I've heard that you got to aim lower than you think.
You do.
Because of the whatever.
Yeah.
The refraction in the water.
Yeah. Woo,
oh, thank
look
you,
at that.
Mr.
Let's throw some physics
Physicist.
in there.
Snagging legal at the spillway.
Snagging's legal statewide.
Okay.
All right, except in those areas, and basically any of the gear that we've talked about, you can't use those gears in any of the spillways of the reservoirs. And when I say reservoirs, Barnett, Grenada, Sardis, Arcobutla, Okeechobee, and even Bluff Lake. So trot lines, set hooks, limb lines, jugs, you cannot use in those spillways.
Okay.
But snagging is legal, but you can't use a treble hook. There's a hook size restriction.
Okay.
But single hook, it can be larger than a number 2 this time of year, but you can only use a snag with a single hook.
Been talking about fishing. I think it'd be real important for us to finish the show. Major Reed is let's talk about this weekend. Obviously, it's going to be very, very busy on the water. Probably one of the busiest that we have.
Man,
Larry, you've been out there on it too, and people everybody, it's 4th of July. Woo! Let's have some fun, but that fun can lead to some issues. And look, we're not trying to preach to you. We're trying to help people understand that
trying to benefit you on the front end.
Be safe.
Yeah, a lot of times, some of the things we would see, these pontoon boats, they'll just, come on, get on the boat, let's go. I'll run you out here to the sandbar. I'll take you over here, whatever the case may be, and it'll be overloaded. And a storm blows up, or a storm doesn't have to blow up. Those boats are rated for X amount of people, and once you overload it, the front end of that pontoon gets below the water level, and that's not good. And so you start taking water on the vessel. It's not safe. If the boat doesn't handle as well, so make sure you be mindful of that. Another thing, when you add all those people on there and you're just, trying to be a good neighbor, you don't have enough life jackets on board for all the people. So you got to have a wearable life jacket on your boat.
For everybody on
board, and they got to fit. So for me, somebody throws a kid's life jacket to try to satisfy the officer's request to see life jackets on board. They don't fly, because it's got to be able to fit me, and it's got to be able to float me.
And again, it's not because they want to give you a ticket. It's because you got to eat. If you go in the water, it's not going to help you.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't wear the life jacket, it does not work. Just like a seatbelt in your car, you can have one, but if you don't put it on, it doesn't benefit you at all.
Doesn't need to be dry rotted.
No,
check your PFDs before you go out.
People have handed life jackets before where the foam's coming out of the back of it, and it's like,
that's not going to work.
That doesn't.
And I want to pass one along to you too. And I do this every year. It happened to me about 4 years ago. It was hot. I was on jet ski. It was hot. Did I tell you it was hot?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I had it. I just had the bottom one buckled, and I had the other ones real loose because I was hot.
Right.
And the dude riding with me decided it was going to be a funny thing to spray me, and instead of spraying me, he hit me.
Ooh.
And hit the jet ski, sent me off the jet ski. And as soon as I hit the water, what happened? It came up to my armpits. So what was happening is my life jacket was about to the top of my head at that point, and literally all I had hanging out the water was my nose. And it scared me to death, man. So
and you ain't pulling it back down and strapping it
no
in the water because it's floating on top.
Yeah.
No, man. It was scared well, first just the shock of hitting the water.
Yeah.
And see, that's what people don't understand. that shock of hitting that water when you're not expecting it.
Yeah.
If you don't have on a life jacket, that's what happens is people don't understand what happens at that moment when you hit the water unexpectedly.
Mm-hmm.
It shocks you. It freaks you out for just a second. It takes you a second to figure out what's going on. And so if you do it, make sure those things fit right and they're on.
Yeah. And another thing, that was a kind of a stickler for myself when I was out working these big holiday weekends is it is a law that kids 12 years and younger must wear their life jacket whenever they're on a boat that's less than 26 feet in length, and that pretty much covers all the boats that you're going to see out there in these waters in Mississippi. Mm-hmm. And the kids are going to get hot. They're going to be crying and they're going to be complaining. But it's law. It's the law that you have to have them on while the boat is operating, and two, you owe them that. They don't have, the capacity to make those decisions.
And last but not least, folks, a DUI on the water is just as expensive as one in a car.
It is, and nobody ever likes going to jail and spending the night in jail. We give you a free night stay at the local county facilities, but nobody wants to do that. You want to go home, you want to stay in your own bed. And that's another thing, safety. That's why we're out there. We're trying to make people have a safe, enjoyable weekend, prevent accidents, and be proactive on the front end.
Well, I hope everybody's safe out there. Hope they enjoy their Independence Day weekend and have some fun. It's going to be a long week on the water. A lot of people are off on Friday. So we're talking about Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
It's going to be a
long,
long boating weekend.
Mm-hmm. It is. And I certainly hope we're not talking about a drowning.
And it's going to be hot. So hydrate with water or Gatorade. Cokes and Miller Lite do not hydrate your body.
No, they don't. All right, there you go, gentlemen. Thank you for being here with us, and
Thank you,
I
JT.
appreciate you being here. I like Chris just puts it like it is, doesn't he? Tell you like it is, sir. You've been there and done it, got the T-shirt, hadn't you? Seen it all.
Yeah.
All right, man. Y'all take care. We'll see you next Monday for more Mississippi Outdoors Radio.